this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? I thought I would talk about plans, my poetry plans for 2024. So I had been, in the back of my head, I've been thinking I should systematically read more poetry because I enjoy poetry, but it's hard. It's hard for me. And so I have read some poetry, but I would like to read more. And that was in the back of my head, and then I kind of forgot about it. But then I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday? I saw Nicole at A Day of Small Things. And if you don't know her channel, you should really check it out. She's just lovely. But she was talking about her plans, and she included poetry. And that, that that made me remember that I had wanted to have some sort of systematic way of approaching poetry in 2024. So what I did was, after I watched her video, I went around the house and I gathered up all the poetry books that I could find. And I haven't really planned out the whole year. The first 4 months, I think I planned out, and then I have ideas, but they're not, none of this is written in stone. But I went through the house and I found books I didn't even know that they were my aunt's, and I'd forgotten that I had them. And so let's just start with January. So January 25th is Robert Burns Day in Scotland. And a couple of years ago, I did a Burns night. I didn't do it on January 25th. I think it was in February because I couldn't get it together in time to do it. But we had fun. And that prompted me to buy this book because I've always wanted to read more Robert Burns. So I think I'm going to make this month, January. I didn't read it yesterday, but starting today, I'm going to try and read. Now I don't know how strict I'm going to be with myself. If I just read one new poem, I'm going to be happy with myself. If I delve in further during the month, that'll be great too. So Robert Burns is going to be the poet of the month for January. I don't think I'm going to do a Burns night, January 25th. A lot's going to be happening in January, so I'm trying to clear my calendar and not plan too much. But I think I can handle trying to read a couple of poems by Robert Burns this month. Then next month, Lent starts really early, and I mentioned a Lenten read that I'm doing with a group of people. But I decided that I found this collection of T.S. Eliot poetry. Now you would think he'd be April. April is the coolest month, but I don't want to read The Wasteland. I don't think I'm up for that. So I think instead I'm just going to focus on this one poem, Ash Wednesday. Yeah, this one. So this book, how old is this book? This was what was my aunt's as well. When did this one come out? This is an older book. Copyright 1936. So, and it must have been, she made little notes too. That's my aunt's handwriting. But anyway, I think I'm going to read the poem Ash Wednesday in February, since Ash Wednesday is happening in February. So, yeah. So T.S. Eliot is going to be my poet for February. And then in March and April, I'm hoping to do this project that I've just started thinking about, and I haven't really done much to plan it at all, but it's a particular reading project that I want to do. And so I'm going to tie my poetry reading into that. So hopefully in March, I'll be reading Horace. Now, I just found this. I did not know I had a copy of Horace's poetry. And a few days ago, I watched Jennifer Brooks doing her review of the classics she read in 2023. And one of the highlights for her was reading Horace's poetry. And she might have just been revisiting it because she might have already had read it, because I think she studied classics in college. But what I like about this, and the reason why I'm doing this in March, is because I'd like to bone up on my Latin a bit. And I like that this is in Latin on one side and then English on the other. So I'm going to be reading Horace in March to help me get to Catullus in April. And this is the student's Catullus, and I want to try, I might take like a really short poem like this, and I'm going to try and translate it myself. So that's my goal for this in April. So that's what I have planned so far. I don't really know what I want to do in May, June, July, August, the rest of the month, or the rest of the months, but I have ideas. So for instance, I found a book of Shakespeare's sonnets. I've never really gotten into Shakespeare's sonnets. I know I had to read some in high school and college, and I might have read others when my kids were studying his sonnets. But I think I might in September, I might try to read a few sonnets. That would make sense. And in October, I have been trying to read Robert Browning. I really like Robert Browning. And so I have been slowly moving through this book. But I've also wanted to revisit Wordsworth. So this is a nice addition my sister gave me many, many years ago. Look, my maiden name. So I would like to read more Wordsworth. So I might do two. I might double up in October and read a couple of Brownings and some Wordsworth. And then I don't know what to do for the other months. I have to think about it. But one thing I really want to read is I have this beautiful edition of G.K. Chesterton's The Battle of the White Horse. And it is an epic poem about the life of King Alfred. And it is beautifully printed. You see the type and the title page, and it's illustrated. It's just a gorgeous book. And I don't know very much about King Alfred. I don't remember much except about the cakes. But this is the whole story of his life told in this epic poem by G.K. Chesterton. And I'm trying to decide what month I want to try to read it. I'm thinking maybe November. I don't know why I'm saying November, but I do really want to, this is a high priority. I really do want to read this. I've had it for ages and ages. I picked it up on a whim years ago, 10, 12 years ago, and I've never read it. I've never cracked it. So I'd really like to do that. And then for other months, I just went around and I found all these books. So this is, what is her name? So look, see, this was my Aunt Jackie got this, Christmas 1944. It's Renaissance and Other Poems by Edna St. Vincent Millay. I don't really know her at all. So maybe one month I'll read her. I don't know. Here's Emily Dickinson. I could try to, I think I got this for my kids when we were homeschooling. And I read her in high school and college too. So I always like that poem. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but anyway. So maybe I'll, oops, sorry about I'm using my ring light. You have to be really careful. Oh, there you go. Whoop, like that. So I might read her one of these months. And then my aunt went to a poetry reading by this poet named Derek Walcott. And here he is. And he is a modern poet. I don't know if he's still alive or if he's passed away. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1992. And she loved him. She went to a poetry reading. She was so impressed. And so she actually has 3 of his books. So this is The Bounty. This is The Prodigal. And then White Egrets is the other book. So, and he wrote more. But, so maybe I should try to crack him. I don't know. A book that I bought on a whim at a secondhand shop. Was it a secondhand shop? Or was it like, I think so. Is this Thrift Books? I never know if I bought it locally or if I bought it from thrift books. But anyway, this is Mary Oliver. She passed away recently. I know I've read some of her poetry online. She writes very short poems, so they're easy to pass around online. And I was impressed. So when I saw this, I picked it up, but I have not, I mean to read it, but I have not read it. So maybe some month will be dedicated to Mary Oliver. I'm not sure. And then, let's see, what else am I looking at? Then I thought it might be good because Nicole at Day of Small Things is actually studying poetry. Like, she's looking for books that explain poetry. And I found this was my aunt's, Understanding Poetry. It is a textbook, and I think its last copyright is 1960. And it has a lot of poems in it too to read. So maybe I should try to go through to try to understand poetry better. And then a long time ago, this book by John Hollander, Rhymes Reason, was recommended to me. And I got it, but I found it too technical. Like, it's all about meter, and I don't know, it's very, very technical. And so I don't know if that helps me understand poetry better or not, if I know the technicalities of it. But that's a possible thing I could read. I could to gain a better understanding of how poetry works. And then I have several anthologies, but I decided I didn't want to go too much into anthologies. I mean, these themselves are kind of anthologies because they're picking different poems to illustrate different principles. A few Victobers ago, I read A Child's Garden of Verses, and that was so delightful. I read through the whole thing, and that was very nice. And I found this book when I was searching for all the poetry books. Gerard Manley Hopkins, who I really like Gerard Manley Hopkins, and Hildegard of Bingen, but it's a retreat, turning pain into power, and it's kind of groovy, and it doesn't look like you can just pull poetry from it. It looks very entwined with the retreat, and even the author sort of writes poems about these two people. So it's a weird kind of book, and I don't know if I like it or not. So I decided not to use this one. And then a couple of anthologies that I am thinking of using is this was a text for one of my college classes, and I loved it. I loved this medieval English lyrics book, and I have read, you can see I made notes, and I dip into this, I mean, not frequently, but I have, over the years, I have dipped into this and read these. They're wonderful to read aloud. There's something with that medieval English that is really fun to read aloud. So yeah, so maybe I'll indulge in this some more. And then another book that I really like that I got used many years ago, and I actually read poetry out loud to my kids when I was homeschooling them from this. This is actually a really early edition from Calvert School. Calvert School was one of the pioneers in homeschooling. Like it provided curriculum to missionaries and truck drivers and people who were moving around, circus families, whatever. If you were moving around, you could mail in back in the day, and they would send you curriculum, and you would work through it and then send it back to be graded and that sort of thing. So it was a very early pioneer in homeschooling. And this is an earlier book that they put out. When did this come out? 1961. So this is a really fun book though, because it also teaches you about poetry. It teaches, but you know, at a middle school level basically, but it has lots and lots of ballads and narrative poems. So here's one by John Greenleaf Whittier, Maud Muller. There's a lot of famous ones in here. Here's Lord Randall, the old ballad. This is a really fun, here, Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. So this is a fun one to dip into. And I was thinking that maybe between this and this, Poems of Childhood, maybe I would just read a smattering of poetry that's sort of considered more children's poetry in December. Since Christmas and St. Nicholas and everything makes me think of children. Here's The Village Blacksmith by Longfellow. So maybe in December I'll do that. But I don't really know what I'm going to do, except for the first 4 months. It's going to be Robert Burns, T.S. Eliot, Horace, and Catullus. I think that's how I'll do it. So those are my plans. Do you have any plans to incorporate poetry into your 2024 reading year? Maybe you already do it. I forget about poetry, and like I said, it is hard for me. I do read it, and I get a lot out of it, but it really makes effort. It really takes effort for me to do that. So anyway, so those are my very general plans about how I want to incorporate poetry. So I hope you're doing well, and happy reading. Bye-bye.